Is it time?
5:29.
Where's Vicky at?
Got a minute?
I don't know, I get to do this in order.
Don't matter.
Are you ready?
Yep, that's it.
All right.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, February 6th. We do have an established quorum this evening. I entertain a motion to approve minutes for January 16th.
Mr. Chair,
Billy.
I make a motion to approve minutes for January 16th, 2024.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All opposed? Any opposed? None? All right. Motion passes. All right. Recognize the person not on the agenda this evening. Seeing none. Tonight's going to be a pretty easy one. It's a big discussion about review of city ordinances. We have no public hearing in action, no new business, and we are here to discuss.
We don't have to do that.
I mean, we can.
It's illegal, so you don't get in trouble.
Fine. Does anybody have any conflict of interest or ex parte contract declarations?
No.
I hope not when we're reviewing ordinances tonight, but
Yeah, trying to keep you out.
as Billy says,
Trying to keep you out.
By the book.
trying to keep me out of trouble. All right, let's get down to old business here. We have discussed the review of the city ordinance. That's why we're here this evening.
That's fine.
I'll start us off this evening with what Brenda sent us last time in email. I started looking, and I didn't really get very far because I started thinking about definitions and all that kind of stuff. The exact same definition currently sits for both the animal hospital clinic kennel small and the animal clinic large. There is no definition that separates those two at all, except for the fact that it's an animal hospital clinic. So there's really no differences between the two in the definition. And I think that's one of those things where if someone comes in and says, well, I want to put a large hospital, what's for them to say, well, it's actually a small one because there's no definition. So I'll start us off with that, just to prove that I was prepared for something.
Starting with A.
Starting with A.
And by the way, I will suspend Robert's Rules of Orders this evening, so feel free to just have a conversation, and that's what this is all about.
Okay, so we're trying to define what dictates a large animal, like cattle versus horses, that sort of thing, and then what dictates a small animal. But then we have down here, it says animals small or domestic. So, is that...
Got a lot of animals going on.
We have a lot of animals, and yeah. Somebody said they wanted a house somewhere in Idaho that was far away from cattle, and I laughed. I was like, "Don't bring them here."
Did you send them to Boise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye. So, anyways, but yeah. So we want to go ahead and figure out large or small. We're trying to basically define what that means.
If you would like to do that tonight, we can have some suggestions, or we can just kind of look at everything as we can look at our zoning and
Okay.
say, this is what our zoning is with regards to the zoning classifications, and then compare those classifications to what our zoning chart says, and then work on definitions. Definitions is kind of a heavy lift in getting everything in there.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the best route forward you guys want to go with. Do we want to tackle definitions first, or do we just kind of want to look at the zoning, what the zoning
Classifications.
so under the zoning district, so in your package you'll have a zoning districts page, which shows your R1, your R2 through your I2s, and it gives you kind of a brief description of what should be in those zones. So you have your residential, your single family, your R1, your residential single family, and then you go to your R2, which is also single family, but then it also allows for attached single family, and then so on and so forth throughout the zones. So it kind of gives you a brief description of what should be in those zones.
Okay.
So
So
we can attack this however you wish to go forward.
Okay.
If you want to start, just kind of looking at the zones, getting an idea what the code says should be in those zones, looking at our chart, and then seeing does it match what our zoning districts say. So we gave you tonight another land use chart example. Nicole went through and grouped them into different categories.
Okay.
So you could look at those and see, well, why is one certain thing that's kind of similar in use allowed in one zone but not allowed in the other, even though it's kind of similar.
Right.
So I haven't been, in the meetings to know where your conversations have been going with regards to this chart. But we will go forward however you wish.
Okay. Any thoughts?
I agree with that, and just keep a tally of all
The groups.
the definitions we need to come back, because there might be, I don't know if Jeff said there was a definition we can just glean from other cities, or there's a, I
There's
forgot the
Black's
database.
Law
Yeah, that's what I'm
Dictionary
thinking of.
has some definitions with regards to that too, when it comes to legal cases.
Well, and at that point, wouldn't it be a matter of kind of like what you said, just like being able to look at the actual, like the zoning map. And so like if it is going to be, because I mean, right here, I see it right now. It says, it says animal hospital, clinic, kennel, large. Those are all conditional use permits. I mean, and they're all conditional use for commercial, for C4, I1, and I2. I mean, which leads me to believe that those are the only areas where that would be like a conditional use permit. It's not permitted in any of the other areas.
That's correct.
And so then,
See, this is where I feel as though you need to have that definition to have a better understanding of where it's
yeah,
at.
I mean, because then it's permitted on all of the other ones, but then it's like conditional use permit for an I2.
And if you go to what Brenda sent us in the email, an animal hospital is a place where animals or pets are given medical or surgical treatment, and our boarding animals is limited to short-term or incidental to hospital use. And it's literally the exact same definition for both large and small.
Yeah, well, there was no breakout of either of those.
Right.
Just, all we had was animal hospital. So it didn't, there was no definition in our definitions.
See, and that's kind of like what I'm saying. I don't know if we can sit there and go, yep, this is conditional and this is permitted without an actual definition of what each one is. Otherwise, we are placing a permissible or conditional use within a zone with a definition that's not there. And if we change the definition, that might change the zoning. Or that, not the zoning, but the permissible or conditional use of that.
Got it. Chairman, I have a question. And he's like,
Yes.
should we kind of like trying to tackle this? Should we go, because I mean, we can talk about animal hospitals today, I feel like, until we're blue in the face. Should we tackle all of these ordinances and definitions and everything in the land use chart? Should we tackle it alphabetically, or should we tackle it based on the importance?
Mission.
I would think
Great
I
question.
think relevance would probably be precedence first, because there's no point in us going through something we haven't seen yet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be reactive versus proactive. I mean, we could really get proactive, but we're going to be here till next year talking about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
most likely reactive is going to be our best approach if you want to capsize the issue.
So if that's the direction in which we're going, then that means that we're going to be looking at residential.
Yay!
'Cause, I mean, that's the big one right now. That's where that's where we're heading. So, is that where you want to go?
Commission?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay. Let's go to residential.
we got a yay on it.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Okay.
Okay. All right, residential.
I was gonna say y'all are brave for being here tonight. This is a boring meeting.
I only came because I was coerced.
Never want to stand anyone up.
Am I blind? Am I not seeing a residential side on this thing or what?
With,
All the way, yeah, it's,
There's
it's
industrial.
page 5. All the way in the back.
There it
All
is.
the way in the back.
There's the little guy.
How important it is.
You know, we're still looking at private personal playgrounds.
I mean, oh, what?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Not on the new one. Is it on the packet? Is that what you're talking about? It's on the packet?
Yeah, it's here, all the way in the back.
Gotcha.
Very, very back.
I've never seen it down here.
Do you, Brenda, out of curiosity,
Sure.
you emailed us everything, like, you emailed us this.
I'm blind.
Yeah. Do you have that?
Yeah, I got it.
yes.
There isn't a rip.
Do I have it?
There isn't one on this one.
I don't know if I have that. I have it in email.
It was given at the last meeting,
What?
This one?
the definitions.
Oh,
This?
Yes.
yeah.
She gave, it was a hard packet. And you sent an email too, right?
I did send it.
I
out
have it in
email.
email. I was hoping to.
Yeah.
You wanna borrow
I'd
one?
like to borrow mine.
Apparently.
Kind of thing.
Apparently I don't have it in the hard.
Yay.
Thank you.
What? Huh.
Everybody else seen the ABCs when they're going through something. When you're looking for a certain letter, you go through the ABCs, how do you get in there?
ABC.
ABCs, no W, no. First one.
I have a question.
Okay.
Says accessory buildings to principal use, PA.
It's a permitted accessory.
Does that include residential?
Be more specific.
ADUs.
No. Accessory dwelling units are not listed in our land use chart or code.
At all?
No, because it was, the conversation, I remember it had to be separate, separate title, separate,
Yeah, we tried to go
Wow.
through an ordinance and create that, but
It was like a 2-hour discussion.
And then
It got ugly as far as ADUs being permissible in any way, shape, or
yeah.
form.
We had a joint.
R1 through 4.
and I believe that went to council and was.
We had like
Yeah,
a
joint.
co-meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not for ADUs.
Lot of back and forth, and ultimately it was no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got left on the table.
My 2 cents. A lot of young people cannot afford to purchase homes.
Yep, that was brought up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And
To include people that are
Also elderly.
I was just about
retiring.
to say elderly, and it went all across the board.
I think if I remember correctly,
Right,
and for
medical.
those of you who were there, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the argument for against it was there was no definitive way to assure that if that property was sold, that the property in question would still be used, and there was no, like,
No legal way to make sure that ADU was going to be used for
Yes.
the previous permissible, for my mom, for my dad, for my daughter.
and that was kind of like the biggest discussion
And
about
that the
it.
principal owner was still gonna be on site and,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Understood. So the issue was that, let's say, somebody calls me and they say they want to sell the house, but they still have a renter in the back, or they still have mom and dad in the back, and mom and dad aren't going to move. So they can't stay there and rent from the new owner. And so they're going to sell it off to an investor, or they're going to sell it off to someone else, and they can't make their mortgage payment unless they rent out that ADU.
Right, so you can't, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot separate a residential owned square. It is sold and it is.
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't think the problem would be immediate. I think it would be 5-10 years down the line,
Okay.
once all the houses are getting sold and mom and dad don't want to live here anymore. They want to go to Florida, or, so on and so forth, and then they turn around and rent that out, or, and when they don't have mom and dad there anymore, they want to move out and they want to sell the ADU as well. And, college buddy moves in with 12 of his other friends.
And if I remember correctly, there was a conversation about EDUs, water hookups,
Yeah.
power,
Correct.
where does that come
Square
from? It all has to
footage,
be
bedroom
separated. I mean,
sizes.
it got
Basically, yeah.
it
you
turned
have to
into like
permit it
a-
like a separate house.
so many trails.
So 2 questions. Well, an observation and a question. One, the observation. People already buy houses and bring their buddies to live with them. Like, they already rent out rooms. Like, that's already a thing.
Correct.
So that already happens. The second thing is, you know, the EDUs and, you know, all of that stuff, it's still going to be like the city still controls that. So it's kind of like when we approve things through here, right? We approve projects here and they still have to go through the whole building department process to make sure that we have the resources to be able to, you know, build anything. I mean, we know that. I mean, we know that from the audience. The audience comes here and tells us every single day or every single meeting about the water and the, you know, resources and all that stuff. Where I'm going with this is, like, we can't put some sort of a rule when it comes to the lot. Like, I mean, like the lot size or anything like that. And the only reason why I say that is because I see people hooking up RVs anyways and have mom and dad live there. So
I think this is going to fall under, and not to rebuttal the point, I
No.
can agree with you on ADUs. I did before, but I can tell you that with Topher, definitely got shot down really quick. But at the same time, as far as the campers and such like that, that's something that needs to be enforced by the city as against city ordinance. So the fact that it is happening, I think I can agree with you, but at the same time, it's not supposed to be.
I think you put
We
together a
do
permit.
get complaints, and we do go out and address them if there is somebody living there. And of course, we send code enforcement out. They take photos and reach out to them and say, hey, you can't live in an RV in a residential zone, you know, only in an RV park. So we do know that it's happening.
As far as ADUs, I can't foresee a lot of folks, and we'll just say we put it at an acre. We'll just say you have to have an acre of land in order to have an ADU. I'm just shooting from the hip here. Don't get too stuck on the size necessarily. What percentage of town falls under that precedence? Very small.
very small.
Very small. So, I mean, the advantage to actually putting an ADU out there would be so folks can take advantage of it. You know, like you said, the elderly, you know, kids, mom, dad, you know, kids can't afford houses right now. I think that would fall under a very small percentage of folks that would be able to do that, which would suck because
And I-
there's no point in putting forth the effort to do it if they can't take advantage of it.
And I do believe that in the course of the conversation, the price of actually being able to put an ADU on your property, I mean, you're at $5,000 plus. That's just to hook up to water and everything else because you have to have your own separate.
It would also
And so-
fall under impact fees as well.
Yeah.
So you'd have your water or your sewer ADUs, your
So you
impact
would have to
fees.
pay all that stuff as well.
Because the accessory building had to be permanent. It couldn't be on wheels. Like you can't bring in a tiny house and call that
Right.
an ADU. So I mean,
Okay.
I mean, again, a lot of really good discussion about it, but ultimately it was just too many were against the idea of seeing where that goes. And I think that what you were saying, looking at all of the properties that could potentially do that, very, very minimal.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it. I mean, if you look at an R4, right? I mean, you're looking at one of the smallest square foot, you know, properties.
Listen.
And that doesn't mean that,
6,000.
you know, you couldn't adjust the ADU to fit the lot space, you know,
Right.
like lot space being, you know,
Wasn't there-
0.15 acres, you know, no more than a 200 square foot room.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be plumbed, has to be foundationed, but that's still, like, I think the discussion should be brought back up, not right now, but I think it should be brought
I
back
agree.
up. I do agree that I think it's a great point, but there are a lot of angles on that.
Well, I think
lot of sharp
in the
ones.
discussion was, a percent of the main house would have to be the percent.
Correct, and that was how we
Got that,
figured, but it was
yeah.
still larger than, because there's still, you know, 2,200 square foot houses that are on a fairly small lot. That
Yeah.
you could put an ADU in the back that would still fit ordinances, and you know, it could block your neighbor. It's fishy business.
Off-street parking requirements.
Yeah.
There are a lot of facets to look
All
at.
that
sure.
stuff. Well, and I've seen also, I mean, it's a little bit of a mix too. I mean, the ADU doesn't necessarily have to be separate from the house. It could be within the house too.
Correct.
garages can be turned into,
At that point, you're kind of looking
That
at a
conversation was
townhome.
brought
Yeah.
up.
Or,
too.
excuse me, a duplex.
yeah.
At that point, you
Yeah.
kind of created a duplex.
Well, and I mean, there's so many downtown right now too, where they have essentially done that. They've turned the basement into, an apartment, and then the upstairs is an apartment as well, or a house or
And
whatever.
we had many a permit come through to renovate a garage into a living space.
Got
And
it.
there's definitely existing ADUs that exist in town that should not be there.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they definitely exist, but that falls under the whole shouldn't or may
Those are under
grandfathered
the
in.
non-conforming use,
And they're
Yeah.
grandfathered in.
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, which basically means that if it were to burn down or something happens to it. So my question is this: if there is an existing ADU on a property and it needs repairs and they come into the building department, they can't pull those permits, or can they?
What is considered a non-conforming use can remain for general repairs.
Okay, got
You
it.
can get, if you needed to fix the roof or, you had something like that, you could maintain.
But no additional upgrades.
You could not, yeah.
Is there a percentage?
And you could not expand it without.
Right.
Or you could actually with a conditional use permit.
But if
You'd have to
it
come in here.
were to burn down, you can't
It has to
build
come
it back.
back, correct.
Got it.
Has to come back to code. To current.
As an allowed use.
Yeah. And that's so interesting to me because in the county, you have even more limited water, but they can build ADUs. I mean, and that's going off of my limited understanding of what they can build out there, but they can build.
You still have to get permits in the county.
Right. You still, I mean,
I
but
think they
it's
allow for one, I'm not.
900
It-
square feet, 2 bed, 1 bath.
But it also depends on where. Like, for example, if you look at Summerwind subdivision,
Yeah.
because they share well,
They can't.
there's a specific kind of, there's a requirement within that community.
CCNR, there's
Yeah.
a CCNR in there.
But I mean, if you own your own property and have your own well,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
Thanks for humoring me.
Sure.
So with that being said, I think the next one will be kind of like this high density stuff that we're starting to see. Like what some of the ordinances are in regards to setbacks and that sort of thing as well. What do you guys feel about that?
Well, before we get there, I was kind of looking at this permissible and conditional.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff in here that kind of doesn't make sense to me. A dwelling conversion, you're conditional all the way up to, is that R3, R4?
What was it called?
Dwelling conversions.
Dwelling conversions. And I don't know exactly what that means. I
And
don't think.
there's
we
the
have-
definitions.
I don't think we have a
When I think
definition for
about
that.
turning a garage into a living space.
I think it is. I
Yeah.
think it's turning like an attached unit into a
So, like-
physical living.
Like she was saying that we have a downstairs and now it's a rental.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did,
Actually, that's C. That's C4. That's
Yeah.
C3 and C4 is permissible.
So
C3 and
That's a
C4.
work live space.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's
It's
like
a what?
that's like you
Work
put
live
a
space?
salon or something
Is it
in
though?
there.
Because a dwelling conversion can also be my son's coming home from college and I'm going to make my garage into a dwelling.
Well, I mean, it's permitted, isn't it?
No, it's conditional.
Conditional.
Oh, I see.
Or does that mean I'm going to make this now, what was commercial or residential, I'm gonna make it something more than what it is, something different than what it is.
For the dwelling conversions? So then that would be all of American Legion, basically, wouldn't it? Because, I mean, there are a lot of, residential / commercial.
Yeah. So that if I have a residential in that zone, then I can convert it to commercial.
But you can't use it as residential again.
Correct. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yes. So what does that exactly mean? You probably should get more detail.
Yeah, conversions is the one that interests me, not necessarily dwelling. Conversions, the word conversions.
Correct.
So that would be a question for definitions, and if we don't have one, we need to start looking at that, especially if it's already within our land use chart. The other one that I was looking at is handicapped residence. Everything is permissible all the way up until R3 and 4. Why is R3 and 4 conditional if it's a handicap residence? That should all be permissible. I mean, that shouldn't be a conditional use permit for anything if it's
Conditional. What's a condition?
Unless that's the C3 and C4 zones, those require a conditional use permit for a dwelling anyway, single-family dwelling, unless that was, if that was the intent of the conditional use in those zones, because you have to have a conditional use permit for the single-family dwelling, I believe, in both of those zones.
The only condition I see is multiple with more than 4. Everything else is permissible in those areas.
So if you look at dwelling,
A
single-family,
single-family.
it's conditional in C3 and C4.
But if you're going to make duplexes, and if you're going to make multiple units, all permissible,
And that's why I feel like it was probably geared towards that single-family dwelling, because as you mentioned, you can have those duplexes in those zones.
personally, Commission, I think that if it's handicap, it should be permitted. I don't think there should be a condition put on anything. If you need handicap space, I think it should be just permitted. Why should we push people to jump through hoops?
And that's for C2 and C3.
C3, C4.
U.S. Commercial, they had
Oh, okay.
EDA then.
And it just doesn't fall under I at all.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it should. You're just saying permissible the whole way across. I'm trying to think of like, play the devil's advocate here and think of what the adverse part of permitting this would be. But I can't think of any. I'm not saying that I can. I'm just opening that discussion.
I think it would be important to define what a handicapped residence is. Is it just a home that was retrofitted for the use of an ADA,
Wait a second,
person?
you telling me we have to go back to the definition now?
Yes, sir. I would, would make sense.
So that goes all the way back to, before we can even start moving things in permissible and conditional, we have to start having definitions.
I mean, there is some areas here that we can look at that do make sense, that do have definitions, such as our retail. So that we obviously know a medical clinic can be the audiologist or the podiatrist or all of that. So, we can look at those and minimize maybe the description to say medical, human, clinic, and have a definition that says anything that's,
What's a group? Like the Brady Bunch.
I don't know whether you put hours on it or not, but you just kind of say what type of services are allowed within medical clinic. And then you have medical hospital, which would be which that hospital, has emergency services. It's, somebody's there 24/7. You have in care inside the hospital, long-term care, short-term care. So it might be that we start with some of that and look at those. But it all plays a part, and that's why I've given you the definitions, the zoning district information that kind of tells you what should be in those zones, as well as the land use chart.
What's group home? No more than 8?
No more than 8.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at. So you have
Yeah.
group homes and you have group care facilities,
Yeah,
but then handicap residence is conditional under those same
yeah,
two.
that's those.
And so it kind of
They don't
plays
fit.
against each other a little bit there.
Would
So
the
I
group,
know-
sorry,
Go ahead.
would the group care facility be something like,
Look at that.
So it's unrelated by blood or marriage, operating as a group family household, may include recovery home for elderly, battered women and children. Like, there's a lot of handicap right there
Like
in
the
that definition,
shelters.
you know what I mean? But it's conditional if you do it in C3 or C4.
so would the senior center be, no, that's
No,
a,
that's
that's
just-
a
No,
community.
That's more of a community center.
Well,
correct?
according to this definition, it's permitted in C3, C4, group care
Well,
facility.
it's permitted, but handicap is not.
I see what you're saying.
You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, they kind of play against each other on those two. So if your definition says elderly care, and a lot of elderly are handicapped, so
Of course,
And
correct
there's-
me if I'm wrong, Brenda. There's no reason why we can't look at this and go, why don't we just take it off of the list? Because it could easily just fall into something else.
Correct,
I mean, otherwise, all we're doing is just we're mudding up more water.
correct, correct.
I mean, why handicap residence? when-
Why is it even on there? Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and so that and like between the group home, or the halfway house, it's just like a,
Group home is under state law as group
Yeah.
home, and it's, so.
So that's gotta be in there like that. But halfway house doesn't.
Right, because that could fall under a group home.
Sure. Can you give me the definition of a
It's
group
almost like
home?
it's protecting.
It's-
from
As per Idaho
multiple-
Code of
I
Property,
didn't see it in
one
the-
place for residents with sheltering 8 or fewer mentally or
With
physically
those
handicapped
right
or
here,
elderly
so, I mean,
persons
you're
to live in
banging
normal
up
residential
your
surroundings as
3 or
single-family
4
dwellings as
unit
provided by
townhouses or
Idaho
whatever, So
Code.
the multi-unit houses.
Yeah,
those
that's
C3,
that's what I'm
C4.
saying, like
So it's almost
the
like
category that it
protecting
fits
that
under is
maybe
almost the
concept.
same, but I had no idea that it was
Permitted
state
for-
law either, so that's a,
Yeah, for handicap.
Commission,
Almost looks like to
I
me.
want to make, I don't know if it's a motion because it's not really a motion, but I want to throw out the idea of alleviating handicapped residents from our land use chart. There's no reason for it. If we're going to permit it in everything except C3 and C4, and yet we have other definitions and land uses that fall within the same type of use, what's the point of having it on there?
I think and it falls under ADA guidelines anyways, no matter what structure,
Like, it probably has to be there because it's required to be there.
That's through ADA, but not on our land use chart.
Correct.
We don't have to have it on our land use chart. There's no law stating that we have to have anything on our land use chart.
As long as we can, define it,
Mhm.
If it doesn't make sense that it's there, because we all know that if a handicapped individual needs retrofitting for their home, it will be allowed.
And that's even through the FHA. Is that what that's called? Fair something Act. I forgot. It's like
Fair Housing Act.
So again, I feel like they put that there because for single family homes, trying to mirror it up with that single family home. So it could easily be removed.
So-
yeah. I don't
I
know.
agree.
So at this point, I guess this is where I need legal counsel. Do we just say as a commission, let's remove it, or do we need to make a motion and remove it?
Well, I would say that we make no motions at this time, but we go through the chart, make suggestions, we bring edits, and then once we have all of our edits together, we come back and
Make
that's when we're making those motions. I mean, we can be in agreement here that, yeah, that makes no sense, then we will alter the chart as we go along.
Okay.
I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
I think it muddies the residential.
So remove.
To remove handicap.
So, I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you look at second from the bottom, manufactured home, class A individual lots, P6, I can't find,
Yeah. What's P
Well,
to the
that's
6th
on-
power?
P to the 6th power was not put on your list. That is on the land use chart itself.
Permitted times 6.
So there's a note.
permitted.
There's a note on the land use chart that ties to that 6, and I don't have it with me.
because it almost
Okay.
goes back to, what you were talking about the conversation, having people having RVs, because it's P6 and everything.
Well, this kind of goes back
Oh.
to your animal thing. So manufactured home park and manufactured home subdivision are the exact same
They are not.
definitions.
Well, they are not the same. As a manufactured home park is generally under single ownership on one parcel. You have your manufactured home subdivision, which can be split out.
Yeah.
And individually sold lots.
So it's the difference between a rented lot and an owned lot, basically.
Yeah.
What's a manufactured home class
I'm
A?
just saying our
Is that a-
definitions that
Our
you give us are
definition's the
exactly
same?
the same.
Yeah.
So
So those need to be
that is
changed.
why we're here trying to
And
clear
that's
all this
what,
up.
if there
yeah.
is another definition, that needs to make it into the,
Yeah.
because that makes sense, what you
Yeah.
guys just said. So get that.
And we do have a manufactured home park ordinance,
Right. Yeah.
so. that
So
ties
which
into all of
definition
that.
needs to change? Is it the subdivision or the home park that needs to change on here?
I gave you my definition.
I have mine. Maybe I can put it. I remember getting it.
I gotta get there.
Oh, you have a
Yeah,
thing
you
of
memorize
Idaho
it.
statutes too.
And there were like multiple things in here that had the same definition.
Well, I would, which one needs to go is, that's kind kind of tough to answer at the moment, because we would want to look at our manufactured home
I would
or
say
a mobile home park
I wouldn't say
ordinance
go. I
of
would say we need to
itself.
change.
Just
Because according to what you said, those
Differentiate.
two definitions are different.
And maybe we need to add then, rather than just change.
Well, we can cross-reference the mobile home use ordinance to see if there's already a definition that exists and adopt that over to the actual ordinance itself.
Yeah.
So,
So we can add some clarity to those. To the manufactured home park and manufactured home subdivision. And then also find out what P6 is all about.
P to the 6th power.
I'm not here to do math, sorry.
So the next time we meet, we all make sure that we have all the notes included with the land use charts so that you can see those as well.
Bern, if I might request, if you could do the same thing with manufactured community units, how is that different from a manufactured home park?
Manufactured,
Community units, individual lots temporary, and manufactured home park.
some clarity on those.
Again, if we can remove one of them,
Yeah,
because it
Contagious?
all just muddles it up.
I agree.
It's in the air.
I refuse.
Talking about
It's like yawning.
What?
Is that secret code? Is that, I'm just not in on it yet.
Brenda, remind me, PA stands for permissible accessory?
Permitted accessory.
Permitted accessory, okay.
It's like a Morse code.
exactly. Yeah.
If you,
And that's,
So,
on this
I'm-
definitions page that you don't
Yeah,
have,
that one
it does it says permitted accessory.
Yeah, so PA is permitted accessory.
so getting back to the next one, manufacturer home, class A, individual. I think class A at the RV. That's a,
I'm gonna look up
So
this
you get
P to the
No.
6th thing.
I don't believe manufactured class A is an RV, I believe it's a double wide.
Google it.
I don't see that.
Which would still fall under manufactured.
Correct, correct.
It just,
They should definitely
we
be
have
grouped into two
four,
separate groups.
we have 4 manufacturer things here that could easily just fall into 2.
Two.
Which would fall maybe back to that subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
After we
And it
figure out
doesn't
what-
necessarily have to be a subdivision, you can have a manufactured home, class A, on any residential parcel, you know, as it's, dwelling, as long as it's on a foundation.
But you can't do ADU.
No.
Okay, that wasn't, my rhetorical came out on that, sorry.
Can I switch gears with you guys and
Use
let's
way-
go
way
to the
more
top
sensible.
where it says dwelling multiple with more than 4 units. Right above that is dwelling, duplex, and attached single family. I understand the definition between the two, but why are we conditioned in C1, C2, and C3 for something that is more than 4 units when in a commercial area you're already looking at a large facility? Why are we conditioning those?
Subnote 4, I mean.
Why are we conditioning them in the
Yeah.
C3, C4?
Yeah, but yet we're permitting duplex and attached single family. All that's permitted, but then we're conditioning dwellings with multiple. So I'm thinking of the ones with like the 4plexes or the 5plexes or the ones that are being suggested or built outside off of Bradford.
Because it's kind of monolithic to the, like a little,
Mm-hmm.
Back down the rabbit hole.
And
Yes.
someone help me understand the difference between multiple more than 4 units and multiple with 3 to 4 units in townhouses. Because that's right below it.
Well, I believe there's dwelling, or definitions for all of those.
Are you guys having fun out there? I'm just curious. Yeah, okay. Just checking.
So
Try to
dwelling-
make it a lively P&Z meeting for all of you.
It says the over 4, it says with 3 or more. So that one, the definition doesn't match the actual word itself.
Well, keep in mind that the definitions that you see here could could be kind of both, and so that's why they're there. They're not necessarily the definition, but you could kind of see what, how similar they are.
So, like, yeah,
Dwellings multiple, a building consisting of 3 or more
more than
attached.
4 is at least 4 homes.
So, in some instances where you'll see dwelling multiple, a building consisting of 3 or more attached dwelling units where all such units are on the same lot, and then you'll have others multiple where they're on, not on the same lot. Then that's when you get into your townhomes and your attached single families that are on separate lots.
So, why then do we not just put and townhouses with dwelling multiples with more than 4 units and townhouses?
Townhouses does have a home with dwellings multiple with 3 to 4 units and townhouses.
So why
on the
not just
land use
move
chart.
townhouses up to the top one? It's the exact same thing.
That was also the same lot as well.
So can I speak?
Yes.
So, you've got, okay, you guys know on North 14th where you've got that long row of homes?
Give me a cross street.
Just like right off of 5th, right off of East 5th. So like as you're turning in, there's like this big row of homes and it's all connected. So something like that, when you sell it, it's on one parcel and it's being sold all of those multiple dwellings.
Okay.
But if you go to, if you go over to the townhomes that are right in front of Curly's on the green, those are sold separately. So then that's where you get your, not definition, but that's where you kind of get like why you have to do one versus the other, if that makes sense. So like if I'm a developer and I say I'm going to build, right, on this parcel of land, I'm going to build townhomes. So that could still be on one parcel of land. They're basically purchasing the airspace and the area where the townhome is located. Does that make sense?
I think you're strengthening the argument that the townhouse needs to be by itself.
Correct, but for our definition for a townhome is a 3 or more dwelling units attached by common walls where each dwelling unit is located on separate lots and no unit is located over another.
Got it.
So with our definitions, yes.
Yeah.
That would be a townhome.
Got it. Because then there's also, I mean, and I don't think we'd ever get there, but then there's also, what is it called?
Condominium
Yes.
styles.
Yep.
And I don't know that we have condominiums listed within our code.
I don't think so. And I mean,
Let's hope we never.
I mean, I think honestly that just falls under dwellings multiple with more than 4 units. That's technically a condominium.
yeah.
But you could also fit that within a townhouse definition as well, according to what we have here.
As long as they're on separate parcels.
The townhomes are on separate parcels. But when a developer comes in,
But okay, hold on, time out. So if we have a separate parcel, right, I can have a townhome with 3 different living spaces according to this definition. Because it says containing 3 or more dwelling units attached by a common wall. So I have 3 dwelling units on one parcel.
Where each dwelling unit is located on a separate lot.
That's the lot,
But each dwelling unit, so you,
but then you share a common wall and it's
yeah,
all
that means you have a
attached.
0 lot line.
So the
See,
only,
this is where it gets money. Now I'm like, okay, so
the
then
only land they own is the only lot they own is what that house sits on in
Yes.
front and back of it, basically.
And it's attached
Right.
to the home next to it.
Whereas what she's saying is that if you have, you know, your fourplex or duplex or whatever it is, that's sold as one unit, as opposed to the townhome where you're basically sharing the wall. So, where you buy
but
that
can't
house.
you sell one side of a duplex? You can
If
sell
it
one
is-
side of a duplex and it still shares a wall.
If
Then it turns into a townhouse. Right?
So that's called an attached single-family dwelling, which you look at your definition there. It says a building containing two dwelling units attached by common walls where each dwelling unit is located on a separate lot. You have a duplex where both of those dwelling units are on one parcel. They're
Yep.
not separated by a lot line.
It's the difference between like when you go to Tyndall, right? Tyndall, the street over there. And so you've got these, I mean, for all intents and purposes, duplexes. But the reality is they're sold separately on each zero lot line parcel. So they're technically called townhomes. But then you've got the duplexes over on Freedom Circle, and when you sell those off, you're selling them by twos.
Together, yes.
Or on Quaker.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
But they're they're separate lots, basically. But I understand what you're saying. It seems redundant, and so then I think that's where our definitions come into play.
Or do you put townhomes on its own line?
And that's where I'm getting at, because if you look at the definition for multiples more than and multiples 3 to 4, the multiple dwelling is the exact same definition, 3 or more on the same lot. So if we're gonna combine two, I would say just combine those into 3 or more, and then put townhome on its own,
I'd agree with that.
you know, so
Yeah.
we don't have to come up with a new definition. The definition's there, it's just combine what makes sense,
Yeah.
So you would like to see townhomes have its own line?
Yeah.
I believe.
Travis, what do you think?
I'll be honest, that was educational for me because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that that was defined that way. I'm trying to think of like the advantage or disadvantage you would have using it on its own line. And then if you did use it on its own line, where is it going to be permissible and how are we going to categorize it like that? It's going to be the exact same as the other two because that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Unless you're going to categorize it differently, there's no reason to separate
I
lines.
think the only difference between it is separate lots. That is the only difference between the two.
Sure, but like I said, if you're not going to change the classification between permissible or, you know, there's no point in changing it. Like, putting it on its own line, why? Just so we can define it for ourselves to understand that there's a difference between the two. But if there's no advantage, then why put it on its own line? Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out here, devil's advocate, like I said. I just like to play the other angle. But if you're not going to change it and there's no advantage to having on a separate line, as far as definitions work, I've been looking at these for, you know, a couple of years now, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that. I had no idea. So that was a new one for me.
So what you're saying, Travis, is if we're going to give it its own line, we should give it its
Advantage
own
or a disadvantage, I don't know.
We should give it its own permitted.
Yes,
So whether it be under R3 or R4.
correct. Yep.
Whereas multiples on a single lot might be in R3,
Yeah.
whereas townhomes you may want to put over in an R4. And these are just suggestions, or not even suggestions,
Well,
just
I
throwing
get
That's
stuff out.
exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Get back to the original question, was why is over 4 all conditional and there is no permit?
Yeah.
So,
There's the mud back in the
yeah,
water.
we kind of go that,
Yeah, Rob.
that full circle, sorry.
Yeah, yep. As far as separating the line, just to like define it for myself, like I guess if we're not going to change it, I don't see a point in it. But if we are, and there's going to be different advantages or disadvantages, then that would make sense to me. But if not, just to change it to define it for ourselves, I don't see an advantage. But
Or for
That's
ease
just
of
me.
locating it on the land use chart.
or
in and
ease of
itself.
locating, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Well, I'm
for
trying to.
future folks.
I wish we had a developer here, because I'd like to hear from a developer's perspective.
Does it make a difference?
Not anymore. He took off.
Oh,
Only because somebody who's coming in to apply for any kind of development, what is their thinking process?
And they may be looking at building codes as opposed to zoning codes, which can be different in definition.
Because
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because if we go, Travis, if I like your thinking on it, but if that's the case, then why don't we just combine what we already have? Dwellings, multiple with more than 4 units, and have townhomes right there with it. and then, because it's the only difference between those two things. Multiple with more than 4 units, and then you have multiple with 3 to 4 units, which I don't know why.
Other than permitted use.
Yeah, and then you have all of it down here. You have conditional and R3, but permitted all the way up to, C4. But for the other one, it's all conditional.
I don't see an angle between the two, but I would like to hear somebody that understands it better than me to give me an angle and then let me understand why they are separated like that. 'Cause
Yep.
there's got to be a reason. There has to be. Somebody thought of something that we're not thinking of
I'm honestly thinking control growth, to be honest with you.
to control what?
To control growth, so if I have
By,
permitted.
by
all-
one unit, though?
Well, I mean, the condition as far as the more than 4.
Right,
'Cause You're talking big
okay.
structure. at
Yeah,
that
yeah,
point,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, at that time.
And so you can go high with more than 4, so I think everything has to be conditional, and I think at least,
You only go to 30 feet though.
what's that?
Sure.
You only can go to 30 feet.
We have a height requirement in all of our zones.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying with the conditional, you kind of see the plans before they happen, and you can kind
Right.
of nip it in the bud type thing,
Correct.
so.
And you can plan for, parking and traffic and,
I'm just trying to think of who made it all conditional, and
Are
it's-
these considered
Yeah,
apartments?
why they did it, yeah.
more than 4, yes, would be
Yeah.
considered apartments.
So,
And if you look up
so
at
now,
the very
okay,
top,
so that'll change everything, because you look at apartments, accessory dwellings, and now we're talking about apartment structures,
Right.
which now
it changes
changes
doesn't
things.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to put townhouses in there.
No. So now we're back to square
we
one.
are talking condos, right?
So all of the dwellings with with more than 4 units, I am assuming are
Or
apartments,
apartments, that's correct.
which now you have conditional use on apartments,
Which is good.
which, yeah, I don't disagree there. So then why don't we label that apartments? Because that would make it a little bit easier to,
Well, definitely cut down the cross-referencing, that's for sure.
Correct. And it's clearer.
uh-huh,
That's the difference.
There is none, that's what
And then
they're
you
just
could add
saying.
your definition of
definition,
apartment,
yep,
to say dwellings, multiple, more than 4.
yeah.
Or put some sort
So I would,
of stacked dwelling.
You would like to see that?
Yeah, no, I'd retitle that to apartments. Instead of having apartments, see dwellings,
Yes.
actually have apartments.
Or just add apartments to it.
Well, we have apartments, we have an apartments line.
There's a
It just says
definition,
C
too.
dwellings. Yeah. Yeah. And then we could utilize the more than 4 as its definition.
Okay, this might be a dumb question.
There are no dumb
No, this
questions.
might be a dumb one. So you got apartments, me and Travis was talking about this, but then you look at a manufactured home subdivision and parks is permitted, so you still got the same density in separate units, because most mobile home parks are not gonna have a yard, it's gonna be close
No.
to 0 lot line.
No. There's fire code requirements with regards to a manufactured home park and mobile home park for separations. And
So it's 10
so it would,
feet?
it depends. So if you're doing a mobile home park, it's either 10 to 20 feet, I'm not sure. I feel like it's 10.
I think it's 10 feet.
We've
like
gone
it's
over
10?
it before, I want to say it's 10.
Wall to wall, right?
Yes,
Wall to
yes,
wall.
yes.
Okay.
yeah.
It's like center to center, that's pretty
I
cool.
mean, you think about, I'm just thinking about density, if you're gonna put apartments, and you gotta get a conditional for that. But then you put a mobile home park, and you don't have a getting conditional, so the density is gonna be the same, in theory. Because you're gonna, I mean, it's gonna be maybe more land use, but you're gonna have the same kind of density.
You're gonna have a greater land area for your
Yeah.
mobile home park than you will for your apartment building.
I don't know if density would be the same, though.
I'm just thinking out loud on that. Because if it's permanent on everything, but there's no caveat on how many, you can put a mobile home park subdivision, you can put 2,000 out there, it doesn't have a,
You're still gonna have setback requirements and yard and open space.
right, yeah, but there's not a,
I think I can agree adding apartments to multiple than more than 4 dwelling units.
I'm just
Just
saying,
adding that in there
Yeah.
and maybe just in parentheses to
I-
understand
I'm
that
just
that
saying
is a,
retitle that to just
Yeah.
apartments, because that's technically what they are.
yeah, I'm not an architect, I don't understand every structure out there, so I think leaving the 4 plus more dwelling units just keeps it covered and safe.
As it's
you know.
definite, as the
Yeah,
definition.
keeps it safe. Yeah. Now I can agree with you that I can't really think of anything, but I'm not versed in everything as far as apartments or.
So, 3 units is a triplex, 4 units is quadplex. Anything above that's an apartment. Right?
Unless it's a townhome, right?
But then you're going out. Yeah.
But that's a separate lot.
Right.
That's where somebody comes in and goes, hey, I want to take this acre lot in the city and turn it into infill. And by the way, I need to vacate what's there now and then basically replat everything in there so that we could make multiple dwellings. So
Isn't that
then,
kind of what happened over next to the Fire Station 3? It's still currently not being built on, but like a while ago they came in, they were gonna do full on like
Tell me where fire station is.
over by the theater that used to be there, that's not there
yeah.
anymore.
On 8th
R1,
Street.
R2,
Yeah.
R3, R4. Conditional.
Yeah, but I believe they were gonna do town.
On C though.
They were gonna do townhomes and that.
I'm not sure, I can't recall, it's been such a long time since we've had that one.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Okay.
Zone it like that in order for someone to move one right next to a house.
No, so it's but you use my presence.
Well, that's why you got to control the table as you approve.
Yeah.
As you go across.
And that's where I was going at. If I keep an apartment here, they're gonna put that.
If we
there, what's the
rezoned
difference?
something and made it an
Do we
R2,
have any
and then
other
say they dropped the
thoughts
project,
on this?
and it was zoned as an R2, we vacated it, yeah, they'd have no.
Well,
they
I
could.
think no, I think
They could.
They just didn't want them on Fifth.
Brenda, you have all of this written down and you can put it together and for
So, are you kinda wanting to wrap things up then for the evening with regards, and
That's where I'm just
utilize
trying to get my
tonight
head
strictly
wrapped
for
around.
residential?
I think
And
yeah.
kinda get that put together in a format, and then look at it again at our next meeting?
Yeah.
I think we put like two clarifications, just so I can mark it on my own notes. Apartments to the dwellings and multiples of 4 or more units. And then we want it permissible for handicap residents the whole way across. Those
Or
are the
we
only
were
two that,
gonna-
No, we're gonna remove it.
remove it altogether.
Remove it all together.
Okay?
Then can we get the definition of, P6?
Yeah, it's not a definition, but it's a note.
Yeah, a note on it.
Yeah. And then you wanted a definition, just to be clear, apartment, so, let me start here, so I can make,
Definition of
so it will
conversions.
make sense. So dwellings multiple with more than 4 units, we are going to
Yeah.
now call that the definition of an apartment. And we will remove that from the land use chart.
Can we
And
also
create
do-
the definition, is
Can we
that
also do a
correct?
definition on dwelling and conversions?
Yes,
Yeah,
so
I got that
that
too.
was next, so we'll get the definition for that. And did we decide to leave townhomes in under dwellings multiple with 3 to 4 units in townhouses? Did you, or do you want that broke out with the
Travis,
same?
you said something about that. Remind me
this-
what you said.
So I don't think that it should be removed from the subjugated spot without having a disadvantage or an advantage to its already permissible or non-permissible. If
Right.
you're not gonna give it, you're just adding another line.
Yeah.
That's
And
all you're
that's
doing.
fine if we add
I
another
agree.
line.
Like-
It's just easier to find, but we can still give it the same.
I think now that I understand
Conditions
it, I would
permitted.
probably find it the same speed I would
Okay.
previously. That's my personal opinion, but you know what? I think if you wanna separate it, go for it. It won't be any skin off my
By the
back.
way, it's there, so
Can we do this then? And this is just an idea. Can we move townhouses then up to dwellings, duplex, and attached single family?
I think that would be better.
well, they're conditional, whereas
Is the townhouses conditional, or is the multiples with 3 to 4 units?
both. They're both under that line.
That's just what I was saying. If you're not gonna change it, as far as its classification being permissible or so on and so forth, you muddy the water even further by just saying, because
So-
they're gonna wonder why it's not part of the same.
I will be honest with you. The only thing that'll change is now in R3, it'll become permissible. That's the only thing that's changing, because right now it's conditional. Everything else is the same.
Could be a big step.
Could be,
So residential area, that's
Unless
gotta
you-
be careful.
unless you've thought it through completely, it might be a big step.
What's the difference in lot size between an R3 and an R4?
don't have that code
R4 is
before me.
5,000 and R3 is 65.
Got it open.
So 1,500.
Yeah.
That's pretty big. I'm not gonna lie. Not trying to be a stickler, but I don't know if I feel comfortable messing with the residential.
Do you need a pointer?
Let me ask you a question.
What?
What are your thoughts on living next to townhouses? In your area, where you live?
I don't know. I mean, so as it is right now, we already live closer to our neighbors.
You're in an R3 zone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're talking, it's the difference between, I mean, it's the difference between something like what they're building over there on Hubble, or Hubble is building over there north of Silverstone, and then what CBH is building over on 10th.
15.
Yeah.
10th, correct.
So how do I feel about it? I mean, I don't. Like, it's just, it's part of growth. So, but my opinion is not everybody's opinion.
No, I'm asking you as a resident of an R3 zone.
Yeah. So,
Will that increase density? That's another thing that you need to look at.
yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly right. Like, that is definitely going to increase density. But again, going back to it, all it takes is one person in our, or on our street to purchase a 5-bedroom house and rent it out to their buddies. Which happens.
It happens, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Currently, there are no regulations or codes regarding that, nor are there for Airbnbs within the city, which is the same.
there are CCNRs, but nobody pays attention to them, and without HOAs.
Verbos?
And don't even get me started, because when I start that conversation, good lord.
So here's my suggestion, Commission. For right now, just leave townhouses where they're at. We'll come back to that if we need to.
Okay.
Let's just leave it alone. Everything else, we'll talk about the definition of a dwelling conversion. We'll throw in apartments with dwelling multiples of more than 4. We're removing handicapped residents, and we're seeking clarity on manufactured home park and manufactured subdivision.
As well as manufactured, and I don't know if it's commercial units. I'm not sure what the abbreviation is for, but we'll try and get some clarity on that one as well.
Oh, and those are only, what, C4, I1, and I2, and they're conditional use permits.
And I feel like those may be, because it's individual lots and they're temporary, so I feel like it might be commercial units where if there's some building going on in a commercial zone, that's
So, putting
that's
up-
like a temporary
Yeah.
type housing.
Okay,
That's kind of where I'm leaning
yeah,
towards.
that makes
about-
sense.
Kind of what they have at Falcon's Landing right now. They have a couple of those. And they just operate from there. They have, like, their office and stuff in there.
Travis, any last thoughts?
Nope.
Billy?
I said what I said. It was good.
It was good.
It was good.
No, I don't think so. I think I would love to start tackling some of the recreation spots and like the parks and stuff too for the next one. So just a suggestion.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
So the next meeting, you'd like to look at recreation and amusement.
Yes, yeah, like kind of like that whole planning out, like, where in relation to these residential things, like the townhomes and everything, we're putting up parks, where parks are permitted and that sort of thing as well.
Okay. I like it.
So, I feel like what you just said is leaning more towards subdivision type parks. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm talking about, yes and no. I'm talking about those, but that would basically come with a conditional use permit, right? Some of them.
Well, our subdivisions, those will have pocket parks within them, and so
Got it.
they're permitted through the plating process.
Got it, okay. And so then, but then also like,
You talking about like railroad park type stuff?
yeah, like the type of stuff that basically, I mean, I don't know if I'm saying this right, and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but like, like the land that basically the city acquires and turns into parks.
Yep.
Those are generally through permitting, or through plating,
Okay.
is how we've acquired them.
Okay,
Now, some of our bigger parks, I'm not sure how those came about. They've been here for ages.
For ages.
So like the parks in
Probably mixed with
Silverstone
Rolling.
or Rolling Hills or whatever, a lot of times those have been platted in as part of the plat
Got it.
for the open space for those areas.
Okay.
So, so if you wanted to talk about amusement, recreation and amusement, that's more commercial, like your event centers, your
Splash
theme
pads.
parks, splash parks.
What?
Ferris wheel.
Oh.
Just in case we'll put-
Don't worry, they got one coming in Shields. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
Putting
Yeah.
I
the
know.
Mountain Home Eye, is that what we're?
Rob, you got anything you want to throw out there?
Good.
Yeah,
No?
but I think, and we'll cover this on the next one, but I feel like amusement also covered like billiards and bowling alleys and all of that stuff.
Got it.
So, if that's where you want to go, we can certainly. look
And
at
movie
that.
theaters and all of that.
theaters
Okay.
And the, yeah, so,
Okay.
a lot of things like that. So if that's what you want to look at, I'll try and get my focus on that and still have some
Nope, that sounds
input
good.
as well.
Take
Okay.
what we've done tonight, and then we'll just throw for our next mix in with the.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sound good?
Cool. Yep.
All right,
Thank you, guys.
ladies and gentlemen, we are dismissed 6:35.
Good.